I feel the need for speed. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 96 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about rugby. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you so much for joining me today. Right now, we are going through a very cold snap. It is so cold outside. It's been consistently about minus 30 the last couple of days. It's going to stay that way for a little while, so we are stuck inside because nobody wants to go outside, and even if we could go outside, there's not really anything to do when it's this cold, so we are just chilling inside. It's a wonderful time to just stay in, be cozy, watch movies, and that's what I'm doing. So I have a movie that I want to talk about today. It's called X-Men Days of Future Past. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. It's been in my mind recently for reasons I'm not going to talk about. It's in my mind, and if you know why I'm talking about it, you know why. If you know, right? And I feel a lot of people out there, you know why I'm talking about X-Men Days of Future Past. Well, for one, it's a great movie. It was released in 2014. It's directed by Bryan Singer, who directed a lot of the X-Men movies. He did X-Men 1 and 2 for sure. Can't remember if he did number 3, but that one's not very good. These X-Men movies, they're very hit and miss, you know. Then, of course, we had X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he was not involved with, and then The Wolverine and X-Men First Class, which is directed by Matthew Vaughn, who is a pretty good director, and I like X-Men First Class a lot. And then we had this one, X-Men Days of Future Past. And I'm going to talk about this movie. We're going to talk about spoilers throughout the entire thing. This movie is 7 years old, and if you decided to listen to this review, you probably have seen the movie already. And I'm going to say right off the gate, I like this movie a lot. I think it's really good. It is probably my favorite X-Men movie, not counting Logan, because Logan, I feel, is more of a solo film, and the X-Men movies are more of team movies, even though it's kind of the Wolverine show throughout the entirety of these films. But basically, X-Men Days of Future Past is the best team X-Men movie, and then I feel Logan is the best solo movie, even though the other options are not very great, because like I said, these X-Men movies are very hit and miss. But Days of Future Past is an excellent movie, and basically the story of this movie is that Wolverine is sent back in time to the 1970s in order to stop Mystique from killing Bolivar Trask, because killing him sets off a chain of events that creates the Sentinels to be made, which ends up having the mutants being all hunted down in the future. But not only just mutants, the machines also start hunting down people who will have mutant children, and it just snowballs from there, and it's a complete massacre, and the future is horrible and awful, and it looks like something out of the Terminator movies. And so they decide they need to send someone back in time. Originally, they want to send Professor X because obviously he's the best choice, but his mind won't survive the trip. The only person who's able to handle the trip is Wolverine. So here we are, we got Hugh Jackman going back in time, having fun in the 70s. Well, okay, actually, he's not having that much fun. This is a pretty serious movie. There are a few jokes here and there, but for the most part, this movie is focused on the drama of things. And what really holds this movie together is its cast. And it has a ridiculous cast, but it does mostly focus on the younger version of the characters. So Hugh Jackman, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, they're really the focuses of this movie. And then we have people like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Halle Berry, those original X-Men cast. They are featured in the film, but they're not as heavily featured as the younger cast, because this is kind of a passing of the torch movie, and then from here, Days of Future Past moved into X-Men Apocalypse, and that was kind of like the full transition from one to the other. And I didn't like Apocalypse. I thought it was a pretty bad movie, and then I didn't even watch X-Men Dark Phoenix because I heard really bad things about that one. So these X-Men movies, oh my goodness. Every now and then we get a really good one though, so that's why we're talking about this one. Obviously, first thing I want to talk about when it comes to the overall stuff in this movie is Quicksilver. And Quicksilver, he is in this movie a very small amount of time. Wolverine, Beast, and Professor X, they all go to Quicksilver's house because they need his help breaking Eric out of prison, Magneto, and they get his help because he's really fast and he's able to work with the prison break. So they go to the Pentagon, and Quicksilver just zooms his way in there, and he is just so likable and fun, and it's very different from the Avengers version of Quicksilver. He's a little more serious. He only appears in one movie, but he doesn't have this jovial sense to him. Quicksilver is the only real bit of levity that we get in this movie, and the moments that he's on screen, he's just so likable and so charming. that how can you not like this Quicksilver? So he zooms in and he rescues Magneto, and they go back up the elevator. And there's a fun little moment where they talk about how Magneto's able to control metal and how Quicksilver's mom knew someone who was able to do that. And that's a nod to Magneto being his dad, which he is. And then in the comics, he is as well. And there's also Wanda, but she's not really in these. Well, she's not in the movies at all. There's one shot near the end of the movie where Quicksilver is like holding his younger sister, who's maybe Wanda, but it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, she's supposed to be his twin, so I don't know what's going on there. Who knows? I don't know what's happening. The point is that Quicksilver is great, especially when they're in the kitchen and everything is going southward. The security guards are firing their guns, and Quicksilver just puts on his headphones, listens to his music, and runs around the room and does incredible things. For one, he's moving so fast, he's walking along the walls. He just pokes a guy in the cheek, but because he's moving so fast, the ripple effect on his cheek, it looks incredible. The way that this scene was shot, they used incredibly high frame rates and able to get this scene to look as fast as it was. I think they were saying 1200 frames per second they were filming some of this stuff at. That's absolutely crazy. It's so high. They were using phantom cameras in order to capture that kind of high frame rates. You can see a lot of stuff. We don't get that kind of frame rates really often in movies. I think in some of the Sherlock Holmes movies, the Guy Ritchie, Robert Downey Jr. ones, we have stuff with phantom camera shot where it's extremely slow motion. And that makes sense when Robert Downey Jr.'s mind is moving so fast, and then this makes sense with Quicksilver moving so fast. We need to have those incredibly high frame rates. But he's running around the room, he takes a guy's hat, he's pushing bullets out of the way in midair because he's just able to do that. And that's something that this movie expresses really well, is just how powerful some of these characters are, especially a character like Quicksilver. He can just walk into a building, zoom through, and have nobody know that he did anything until after it's way too late. He's so powerful, he broke Magneto out of the Pentagon basically by himself. He had to hold Magneto's head behind him so he doesn't get whiplash, and just zooms him through a hallway, and Magneto is hardly able to handle being moved that fast. So it just goes to show Quicksilver is incredibly powerful, and why they didn't keep him around in order to help with all the stuff that was going on, I have no idea. And it's not until the next movie in Apocalypse when he shows up again and he saves everyone again. And it's an even crazier scene than the first one. I like the kitchen scene more than the scene in Apocalypse where he's saving everyone in the mansion. I just feel that with the one in Apocalypse, they tried to go bigger and better, and they did to an extent, but it didn't have that same charm as this one in Days of Future Past. So I like the Quicksilver scene here better than the one in X-Men Apocalypse. There's just something about it that's terribly charming, and I like it a lot. And I like that character a lot, and I wish we would have had more of him. But with a character who is that powerful, like, you get to a point where you say, okay, well, Quicksilver can just solve everything, because he'll move so fast, no one can see him coming, he'll just kill who he needs to kill, or steal what he needs to steal, and no one's able to stop him, because no one's on his level of speed. So that scene in the kitchen where Quicksilver is messing with everything and saves everyone is probably my favorite scene in the movie, but I don't think it's the best scene in the movie, and I'll talk about what I think is the best right now. We get a really great performance out of James McAvoy in this movie. He plays a younger Charles Xavier who has just lost a lot in his life. He lost his legs, he lost his friend in Eric Lensher, he lost Raven. Everything is just gone from him, and he just can't take it anymore, so he retreats into himself. He's taken this drug to make himself walk and give up his telepathic abilities, so he can't read people's minds anymore, and he is just in such a low place. And there's a moment in the movie where he gets his powers back and he enters Wolverine's mind, and through entering his mind, he traverses time to go to the future, and he has a conversation with his older self in the form of Patrick Stewart as the original Charles Xavier. And this scene is so powerful and so emotive. I could watch this scene over and over again. I love it. I love the colors of the stained glass in the background shining through. There's a moment where before he even speaks to his older self, he's talking to Wolverine, and there's a line that I always think about. He says, "I don't want your suffering. I don't want your future." And he's so fed up with life. He's sick of it. He's done. But he goes to his older self and he sees that there's hope. And the entire point of the scene is to order to instill hope into this younger Charles and give him a reason to fight, a reason to keep going. And we do eventually get that through the words of your older self, right? Like who wouldn't want to take the sage advice of yourself in the future to come back and say, hey, you need to just chill out a little bit. A lot of people are counting on you and you need to, stand up for what's right and get back into the fight. And that's what happens. And it's just the best scene of the movie. I will always say the best scenes in movies are when we get really good character moments, and this is the one for me. We get another really good character moment earlier in the film with young Charles and young Magneto on the airplane, and Magneto lashes out at Eric saying that he abandoned everyone and he's leaving the X-Men and the mutants to just all die because he's too sad, and basically making the point that he needs to just deal with his sadness and fight for the greater cause. And even though that scene kind of parallels the young Charles, old Charles scene, Magneto and Professor Xavier are going about the same message in different ways. And me and my wife were actually talking about this, about how Magneto's intentions are good and what he wants to do basically is good, but he's going about it the wrong way. He wants mutants to be above humans as opposed to on an equal playing field, which is what Professor X is fighting for. And he usually goes with a more aggressive route. So, and we see that repeatedly in this movie, where he's crushing the plane and yelling at Charles that he abandoned everyone and he needs to fight. And when they get to Paris and he sees Raven for the first time, he's like, okay, you need to die so that the rest of us can live. And he's straight up just going to kill her. And very nearly succeeds. He doesn't, but it's just goes to show how true to the characters the writing of this movie goes. It knows exactly who they are and plays to their strengths, plays to their weaknesses, and gives us a really interesting character journey for a lot of these characters in the film. And I think that's what really resonates with a lot of people about this movie. It's a good movie not because there's fun action and you see Wolverine kill a bunch of people. It's because it's really focused on the relationships. It focuses on Charles and Eric, Charles and Raven, Raven and Eric, Wolverine and Charles. It knows how all of these characters interplay and interact, and it plays to the strengths, plays to the weaknesses, like I said, and really gives us a movie about people. Yes, it has time travel. Yes, it has superpowers, but it's really about the people and the relationships, and that's what really sticks with me about this movie. Not Quicksilver running around having a fun time, even though I really like that. What sticks with me is just the characters interacting and having really thought-provoking conversations for us, the audience. The X-Men have always kind of been stories in the comics to kind of represent people who have been oppressed, and I don't think it was meant to be something that represents one particular type of people who have been oppressed. It really just expands across all people, so anyone who feels oppressed by any other kind of people can see themselves as the X-Men and understand where they're coming from and where their fight is and try to fight for that equality. And I think that that's a magnificent lesson under a very obvious disguise. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? I'm not 100% sure how I want to word this, but the point I'm trying to make is that it represents oppression in all forms, and that's what the X-Men are kind of always fighting for, except for Wolverine, who fights for kind of himself and his own journey, his own pain, and Logan goes in a completely solo direction with that. And oh man, Logan is such a good movie. I want to go sit down and watch it again. Just thinking about it, it's excellent. But I'm not talking about Logan today, I'm talking about Days of Future Past. One thing that I want to mention about Days of Future Past and just the X-Men movies in general is the timeline of these movies. When things take place, when they don't, and how the movies all fit within each other. And the easy answer is they don't. Between X-Men, X2, X-Men United, X-Men The Last Stand, The Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine, First Class, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix, New Mutants. Are there any others that I'm forgetting? Deadpool, Deadpool 2. all of these movies are just kind of their own thing, but they're related at the same time. Especially Days of Future Past, it has the old cast, the new cast, kind of blended together, but it doesn't have things from X-Men Origins Wolverine involved. It doesn't have... It's just so hard to kind of wrap your head around what's going on with these movies, and I think that the point of Days of Future Past was to try and kind of wipe the slate clean and give us a new timeline to work off of. But I don't really understand, because when you look at X-Men Apocalypse, it's supposed to take place in the 1990s, and we have James McAvoy being Professor X, but then the first X-Men movie came out in 1999, and it's Patrick Stewart as Professor X, so in 5 years did he go from James McAvoy to Patrick Stewart? Like, that's a lot of aging, and these characters in First Class, it takes place in the 1960s. So from the 1960s to the 1990s, they look all exactly the same. And so you kind of have to just put that out of your head and not even really try to think about it, because if you try to, it's going to all fall apart and it's not going to make any sense. And I'm going to say the same thing that I've said for a long time, and when my wife was asking while we were watching the movie last night as to how this fits in and what happened to characters between movies, I would like to word it this way. If Fox doesn't care about the timeline in these movies, I shouldn't care either. If they're not putting any effort into it, I shouldn't put any effort into trying to understand it. Just enjoy the movies for what they are, and, you know, when they try to make connective threads, maybe don't look at it too closely. And we can look at other movie universes the same way. The DC EU, or whatever you want to call it, it was kind of connected, and now it's doing its own thing. Is Wonder Woman 84 connected to Shazam? Is Shazam connected to Batman v Superman? Kind of yes, kind of no. Is Aquaman connected to anything? Not really. It's doing its own thing at this point, and we just kind of have to let it do what it's going to do and watch the movies, and if they're good or if they're bad, you know, just enjoy them and let the Marvel Cinematic Universe do its own thing with being cohesive, right? Although I would like all of these movie universes to be cohesive, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to ever see anything like the Marvel Cinematic Universe ever again. It's special and it's unique, and its success is completely founded on Kevin Feige and his brilliance. And no other studio has a Kevin Feige, and I don't think ever will. So that's that. We're not going to see it ever again. We're not going to get a solid movie universe like the MCU. So we shouldn't expect it, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. We saw it, and it happened, and it was amazing, and we're still getting it through WandaVision, and we're going to get Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There was a new trailer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier that came out just yesterday, and I found out yesterday, I guess, was the Super Bowl, and I had no idea until a friend of mine told me, oh, I'm going to watch the Super Bowl today, and I just did not know. I had no idea, but we got a Falcon and Winter Soldier trailer out of it, and I'm really looking forward to that show. I think it looks great. Speaking of Disney Plus, I watched this movie last night. I streamed it on Disney Plus, and I had heard in certain places that there was Disney censorship going on and changing things in movies and making alterations in order to make it quote-unquote Disneyified, and I was worried that that might happen. So that's why I watched it on Disney Plus, so that I could see if it was changed or not, and it wasn't at all. This movie is completely uncensored. All of the swear words and violence and everything like that, it's exactly as is. Nothing was changed about it. So I don't know if any of that censorship stuff is actually founded or not. I don't know anything about that, but I know from watching Days of Future Past, nothing about the movie was changed at all. So I can happily say that as far as I know, there's no censorship going on, which is good. I don't want that. I don't want something to end up on Disney Plus to be edited and snipped and altered so that I'm not watching the full vision of the movie. If Disney feels a movie that they acquired shouldn't go on Disney Plus because of its content, then they just shouldn't put it on. That's why Song of the South isn't on there. That's why Deadpool is not on there. And they're gonna do their own thing. They've got Hulu now. There's some kind of new bundle that they made with ESPN and Hulu and Disney Plus. I don't know much about it, but I'm not talking about that today. I find myself often saying that. No, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this. Let's get serious here. Let's talk about the final battle. And the final battle of this movie I find really interesting. I like it a lot. I especially like it because it's fought across two timelines. We have the stuff in the 1970s going on at the White House and the stadium, and then we have stuff in modern day going through the warehouse or wherever it is that they're staying in China, and the Sentinels are showing up and killing everybody and just plowing through, and Magneto is fighting, and there's another example of the power of these characters is that Magneto is able to lift a stadium, carry it across Washington, D.C., and then drop it over top of the White House in order to close them in. It's absolutely crazy to think that he's able to do that. That has got to be so heavy. And I know in the other movies he's moved large items like is it the Golden Gate Bridge or some kind of big suspension bridge? I don't think it's the Golden Gate Bridge because I think it's in New York. I have no idea. He moved some kind of suspension bridge across the water in order to put it where he wanted it to be. So Magneto is crazy powerful. Quicksilver's crazy powerful. Charles Xavier is crazy powerful. Mystique is like a really good con artist. I wouldn't say she's crazy powerful, but she's pretty powerful, and she has a really unique genome, which I guess Bolivar Trask is going to be able to use her DNA in order to create the Sentinels, which makes them adaptable to the X-Men's powers, which I guess in itself is pretty powerful, but I don't remember in any of the previous movies of her being able to actually replicate other people's powers just to be able to look like them. So does that really line up? I don't know. But yeah, Bolivar Trask. Peter Dinklage is in this movie. He was really famous for Game of Thrones at the time, and that's why he's in this movie. And his performance is fine, nothing really of note, and that's why I completely forgot to even talk about him until just now. Going back to that final battle. Across two timelines, I thought it was really well done, really well edited. The score, especially for this battle, I think is really good. I think the score for this whole movie is good. It has very serious undertones, and it's very dramatic, and I think really adds to all of the different scenes that it plays in. So score is really good. You really get a sense of drama and dread, especially when the Sentinels start killing everyone in the future, and you have very limited time left before everyone is just kind of dead. And whatever Wolverine has done in the past, he needs to have completely done by the time the connection breaks between him and then whatever he's done will take place, and then the future is changed based off of the changes in the past. So we have to make sure that whatever Wolverine did needs to take root and not cause the creation of the Sentinels, which of course eventually it does because there's more X-Men movies. That's not the end, and I think we're going to get more X-Men stuff, especially in the MCU now that Disney has bought Fox and we're able to cross that stuff over, so we're going to get stuff like that. But these X-Men movies, they are done. I think that Days of Future Past would have been a really good place to end on, especially because the next two after that are not very good. We did get Logan, which is great, but I think that Days of Future Past, it feels like a really solid ending, and Wolverine wakes up and everything is as it should be. Everyone is back. People are alive. Jean Grey is there. Storm, Cyclops, Rogue, everyone is there. And life is as it should be, and it's happy and it's fun. And he goes back to talk to Charles Xavier, and he says, "What's the last thing you remember?" And I think that would have been a really note-perfect ending for these X-Men movies. Unfortunately, they just kept making them, and the next few weren't that good. But oh well, I digress. The point is, Days of Future Past is a really great movie. I like it. There's a lot of things to really like about it, and the only real complaint that I have is that I would have liked to see a little bit more Quicksilver. I think that he's really useful, and they could have used him more, but he's a potential story-breaking element. So I understand why you don't want to include him and overuse him too much. So I understand why, but I would like to have seen more of him. I think that's going to be pretty much it, though, here. Like I said, X-Men Days of Future Past, it's a great movie. I really like it a lot. It had been a few years since I've last rewatched it, so rewatching it last night was a great refresher and a great reminder of how good 2014 was as a year of movies and how great this X-Men movie is. So my question for you guys today is Is Days of Future Past your favorite X-Men movie? If not, which one is your favorite? I would love to find out. You can feel free to let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PottleNathan, and you can find the show on Instagram at Movies Are Awesome Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please feel free to subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and a whole bunch of other places. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. And as always, if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.